Hi, welcome to Al Brown's QA50 second gear slip 5-step approach. Okay, I've set up a QA50 gearbox here. This is a 1970 K0, and what we have here is our shifter, our drive sprocket with the chain coming off, and this is our second gear all set up with our pull and our flange and our shifter, our stopper, and I'm going to go through the 5 separate steps that hopefully will solve your problem. With the operation of this gearbox, it's 2 down, so you click once down for first gear, twice down for second gear, and then back up again. What that does is that moves these fingers backwards and forwards, which transfers to the part here, which is the gear selector, and the gear selector has a little pin that goes into the flange, and that drives the pull shaft through the tranny counter shaft, and you've got the pull here, and that pull goes into the second gear. There's a little slot in second gear that turns the whole counter shaft, which in turn drives your motor. Now what happens is the pull slips back out of second gear in between first and second, and that's where you get your problem. It slips out and then it slips back into second, drives it, and continually slips in and out all the time. So that's I'm going to go through today and show you exactly why it does that and how to fix it. So I have another transmission here. Here's one we've got here. I'll just make sure you're in the picture. Okay, this is second gear here, and if you look on this side, you can see some small wear marks. Now, some trannies will probably have severe wear marks there on the second gear and on the pull itself. This is the pull here. So if you have that problem, then you'll need to machine up or replace them. Pretty hard to get the parts now, so you'll probably be trying to just square them up a bit. There is a small bevel on the pull and on the second gear slots, so just be aware of that and just try and straighten them up as much as possible. I don't believe, if they're not really badly worn, that'll be a bit of much of a problem. But anyway, that slots onto your counter shaft like that, and basically what happens is your pull goes into there like so, and what happens is it comes out, and there's a small spacer in between like that, in between second gear and first gear. It comes out into that space, and that's where we get our problem. There's no drive, she just spins. So we've got to stop that from happening, and I'll just put second gear in as well. First gear, here's first gear. That would go on there like that, and that's the assembly, and basically that spacer in between is where you're getting your slip. The pull goes in there and we have no drive, and then it goes back in again. Okay, so we talked about I want to talk about the 5-step approach, which is the pull and the second gear being worn, so check that and have a look at that. That's the first step. The second step is a pull modification. So you've squared your pull up and your second gear, hopefully, and what we've got next is the pull modification. Now the one on the transmission here, that's an unmodified one, and the one here in my hand is a modified one. Now if I come up closer and you look in there, normally that internal shaft, the pull shaft, a little bit of the thread sticks out and stops the pull from going all the way to the end of the counter shaft. Now you want that pull shaft to go right in, and you want the pull to drive right into second gear. Otherwise, I've actually assembled the motor, leaving the big end and the head and the barrel off, looking inside, and what you end up with is you end up with something like that, where the pull just can't quite go in far enough. Now one of the reasons is that you've got that little pin there that should be cut. You should machine that off with a Dremel or something like that, and so that it can drive right in. Now look at this one. This has been modified, and that can drive right up to the end there, thus going right into second gear. So that's the second step I wanted to talk about. Modify that, and hopefully we'll get that pull driving right into second gear. The third step or modification is on the other end, and you've got the pull spring here. Now this came in that QA50 kit that you could buy. It's got about 5 windings on it. The original one only had about 3 windings on it. You want the modified one. Most of them come, you'll see you've got that anyway now, and you want that as strong as possible. So I'll probably take this one off and maybe stretch it a bit or put another washer in there. You've got to have some movement, but if that's sloppy, then you're going to have a problem. Now there is other people on Mike G and a few others on the internet that talk about a few of the things I'm going through. I've just added a couple, and hopefully, because this gearbox has been modified and it still has the second gear slip, so I'm going through an extra couple of modifications that I've done, and hopefully when I post this up I'll add comments that it's working fine. So there's your shifter, goes in there like that. Sorry, your counter shaft and pull shaft, and that will get the shifter will push that right into second gear. So fix that spring, and hopefully that'll help cure the problem. The fourth step I want to talk about is this selector here. Now I'm going to zoom in on that now, so we'll come forward a bit, and you can just see the selector there. I might take it apart in a minute and show you. Now the selector itself needs to be modified, and that came in the QA50 kit as well. It needs to be modified so that it actually can drive the pull shaft in further. What happens with an unmodified one is the pull shaft can't go into second gear enough because the notches on the selector aren't allowing it. So I'm going to disassemble that now and show you. Let's pull this apart. Just get this out of the way. And we can take this apart here. Okay, now I've modified this one. If we have a look here, and what I've done is I've cut about 3 millimeters off of this area here, allowing it to come this way and push that shaft in another 3 millimeters. You want 3 millimeters. I worked it out. It was 37 millimeters, and you want 40 millimeters. I put it in the side cover, measured it. So that's another modification that you want to do, is notch that selector out, have a play with it, and I'll just show you that one again. Here we are. So have a look at your one and have a look at my one, and I've notched this up about 3 millimeters, and that allows this pin here to push like that and push your pull shaft further, and push that pull further into second gear. Now the fifth modification I want to talk about is the stopper and the stopper spring. And I believe what happens is, with your shifter, there's a stopper that stops in here, and I believe the spring goes weak and it bounces around, and see how it can push your pull shaft back out, which sends the pull out of second gear. What you need to do is get that right in and hold it there. So you have a look at our thing again here. Here's our stopper here, and that's the spring inside there. Now I did a measurement of that spring yesterday, and it was 22.9 millimeters, and I stretched it out to 27.3. Here's the spring. I suppose you could go out and try and buy another one, but I've just, for an experiment, I've stretched it out, and I might even get a little bit of liquid metal and put it in the stopper just to shorten it up and make that gap, make it a bit stronger. What that stopper does is, as I said before, is it goes into your shifter there like that, and as you're going through, there's second gear there and first gear there and neutral. Now you need that to get right in and stiff so that it doesn't keep spinning and bouncing out. Now those 5 steps, the pull and the second gear machining and checking, make sure that's fine. The pull modification itself, make sure that you've cut the end off the off the shaft there, and you've got that really ramming up hard. Your pull spring, which is that section there, make sure that's the newer 5 windings type one, and that it's nice and stiff and there's no slop. Your gear selector notch modification, so you want to make sure your gear selector is modified so that it can actually push that pull shaft and pull right into second gear. And your stopper spring, which I believe is important as well, because I did this modification yesterday and it really stiffened up the action. I put it back together and it could still change through neutral first and second and back again, but it made the action a lot stiffer and really got that second gear in there hard, stopped it from so moving around. So just another couple of points I should mention just before I wrap it up. When you take your pull off of the pull shaft here, it's a left-hand thread, so it comes off the opposite way to a normal nut and bolt. So just to get that out of there to do the modification, just spin it off the opposite way. And also your gears, just make sure they go on the right way. You can get a bit confusing with the cutouts there. The groove facing towards the sprocket on both of them. So there's your first gear here, and your first gear. They'll both orientate like that on the gearbox. Now there is a guy on the internet you can buy a video off of on how to assemble it, and I use his videos. He's really good, and I suggest you do too, to put the motor back together, because it can be a bit confusing. Another couple of things to look at quickly is when you assemble your motor and you have that pin sticking out of your selector, you've got to make sure that it goes in the flange, like so. Oop. Like that. Okay, so make sure that's in there. And also your gear shifter there goes in between that V. If you don't have those two things right when you're putting it back together, you can have all sorts of problems. Okay, I'd like to wrap up our Browns QA50 second gear slip 5-step approach. Good luck with your one, and hope it all works out well for you. Thanks.